welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man who busted out his overalls with only one strap on and his white New Balance shoes. It's Erik Hoffmeyer.
I have been waiting to wear these overalls 30 years. They've been in my closet, and I finally got the opportunity based on our 1993 movie, Only the Strong.
You bought those overalls in 1993 with the money you had when you were 13, and you just went and... Remember we went to the mall and you're like, I gotta look like those guys. You put together the whole outfit and you went to school like that.
Did I really? You remember that?
Did you block it out? No,
I can't remember. I really can't remember. What's the allure of the one strap? I don't understand why you would buy overalls and only use one strap of the two. With the other one just dangling around everywhere. I mean, it's got to get caught and stuff throughout the day.
I mean, yeah, if you're running in a horror movie, you could get totally stuck on that. They should use that as a trope. I just think it... But think about it, though. If you go to school wearing the double, like, that's not a look. Does that make sense?
That's workwear.
Yeah. So maybe they're coming from work and they did one thing off to make it seem like they weren't working anymore.
I think it's genius. You take a pair of overalls which are made for function, and you can make them completely unusable. And they're not good for anything. They're not good for fashion. They're not good for working with only one strap. You can't wear them in a capoeira fight. I mean, come on.
Yeah. But... That was the look, man. That was the 93. Big shorts.
I did.
Big shirts. You know how many big shirts I wore in 93, Erik? With the Anaheim duck in the back busting through the forward. So on the back of the shirt, it's the duck butt. And on the front of it, it's the duck bursting out of the front of the shirt. Like, I wore huge shirts.
I remember that. I remember the Stop or You'll Go Blind shirts. You remember the Mossimo shirts?
Yeah, and then the
round sunglasses? It was all in this movie. It was all there.
I wore jorts. I had huge jorts. I have a school photo of me in elementary school with jorts that were basically pre-Jinkos.
And they were worn unironically, too.
Yeah. I looked great. It was the 90s. No one cared.
Yeah, you could tuck in a shirt with it and be perfectly acceptable with white shoes. I think the British night shoes.
I looked awesome back then. And I'm glad that we're talking about this because our last episode was my best friend's wedding. And you and I remember watching that in 97. I was 15, you were 17. I remember us talking about that. That was a big, different, unique movie. I mean, it kind of subverted, it subverted tropes in romantic comedies. It really didn't go. It did, yeah, age well, and it didn't go where you were thinking. And I remember watching this, Only the Strong, when I was 11 and you were 13 in August. So I was probably 12 by then because we rented it on VHS. Rented this movie because it was only released in 600 theaters. They dumped this in the theaters in late August. Its competition was, it had Jurassic Park still in the theater. It had Sleepless in Seattle still in the theater. It had Hard Target, In the Line of Fire, Free Willy, The Firm.
That's a heavy lineup.
And it opened like number 8 at 1.2 million, but it was only in 668 theaters max, this film. I learned today...
How do we find it? How do we learn about it if it was such a limited release?
I mean, we must have been trolling the supermarket video store. Because it's a cool cover of this. You have a guy with his fist in the air, Mark Dacascos. And we're like, who is this guy? And then there's students looking like, yeah, this is great. So you're kind of thinking...
I don't know, that's only one. That's one cover. Other covers showed him squaring off against the main bad guy, Silverio.
Yeah, and that was the dude from Lionheart.
It's a teacher movie. And the next one was just him in a fight against the main bad guy. So I don't know if they really knew what this movie was. And he was in Lionheart? Really?
Yeah, the Silverio was. His name's Paco, and he also helped with a lot of the fights in this movie. So Paco Christian Prieto, he was Silverio, and he was the pool fighter in Lionheart that gets beat up by... Yeah.
Wow, that was a classic fight. That's one of those classic fights on Lionheart. But there's another Jean-Claude Van Damme connection here because one of the writers of Bloodsport also wrote this movie.
Yeah, I mean, the guy directed it too. So, I mean, that's right. Sheldon Lettich, he also was a co-writer on this with Luis Esteban. But Sheldon Lettich, I mean, this guy went on to, he wrote Bloodsport, he wrote Only the Strong, he directed Lionheart, he wrote Rambo 3, and he also... he wrote Legionnaire, and then he directed Lionheart, Only the Strong, Double Impact, and he did a couple of Jean-Claude Van Damme's direct-to-DVD movies, like The Order, and those kind of films. But this guy, walking into this movie, had Lionheart and Double Impact under his directorial belt, and he had written Rambo 3, Bloodsport, and those other films. So this guy knew what he was doing in this film. And he wanted to branch out from JCVD, and he heard about this Dacascos fella, who is, young and hot. Like they wanted him. This is so apparently I was watching an interview with him. They wanted Dacascos to be like the next. So Brendan Lee was sort of kicking off at the time. So when he tragically died on The Crow, this sounds horrible, but this is everything from the director. They wanted Mark Dacascos to be the next Brendan Lee. Yeah, and the problem was with this movie, he went on to go work on, and there's not much out there about this movie as far as I had to go to the dark web to find a podcast interview with Sheldon Lettich. I made some weird friends.
You had to cash in your Bitcoin.
Yeah, I made some weird
purchase
friends
something on the dark web.
Weird friends on there. I've
That's
seen
a weird
some stuff.
rabbit hole you went down.
And yeah, but the director said that Mark had to immediately go to Double Dragon after this. But the problem with Double Dragon was it went too long and Mark couldn't get off of it, get time to go on the press tour. So they were Fox was going to have a massive promotional tour to show off this Dacascos fella that's going to be the next Brendan Lee, which is horrible. I mean, the guy just died tragically. We got a next one. And so I don't know who this producer is. We got a next one. But he couldn't get off to go do the promotion. So then it was supposed to be Sheldon Lettich and Paco going on the tour. But then they were just no one knows you. So they canceled it. And then they just dumped the movie into theaters in August. So there's no marketing. There was no super press. The screenings were through the roof. But I mean, we watched this, Erik. This stuck with us for a very long time. When this wasn't, we watched it, we loved it, right? We watched it once.
Yeah,
we rented it, and then I don't remember how we rented it or returned it. But for years, I was going Whanganui, but I realized it's Paranui, which I was 11 and I was in the country in Hudson, Florida, so I can be forgiven for that. But it's Paranui, but you and I have always the spin kick, when the kid knocks out the thug at the end when he just walks up to him and gets. I never forgot that scene. And then just the capoeira. I mean, every time I see capoeira, I go only the strong. That's just. You took capoeira lessons.
I did when summer a studio opened up. I realized I had zero talent whatsoever for capoeira, so I stopped doing it. But you're right. I think it struck a chord with us in rural Tampa Bay area that it's Miami. It's this new exotic dance from Brazil. It just was so different to us at the time. And Miami was only 4.5 hours away, but it might as well have been on the other side of the world. Very different parts of Florida. But the movie was really memorable. I was actually surprised that it's not streaming right now. I feel like it should be streaming. So luckily, what are the odds of this happening that you and I both still had this DVD from 20 years ago? I think you got it for me as a gag gift about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, something like that. And I just kept it all these years.
Yeah.
And then I didn't even remember that I had the DVD until I realized it wasn't streaming anywhere. So I found the DVD, and thankfully my DVD player still works because I never use it. And I was able to rewatch it. I actually watched it twice, and I enjoyed it.
And this is super random too, because you were with our cousin Donnie watching some MMA. A UFC was on a couple of years ago, and you met him at the bar to watch the fights. And Donnie and I, what we do is we make bets for DVD. So basically, if he picks somebody, and if he gets it right and I don't, we send a movie theme for that fighter. So if the fighter's from Poland, we try to find a Polish picture or whatever. And so you two were at a bar. I got the right pick. Come in, and then 3 days later, Only the Strong shows up, and I'm like, oh, awesome, I own Only the Strong now. And that goes with my, Donnie's also sent me No Retreat, No Surrender, Jean-Claude Van Damme's first movie. He sent me Vision Quest with Matthew Modine, where he's a wrestler. I also got White Knights with Gregory Hines and Mikhail Baryshnikov dancing. That's because Jan Blachowicz won. Let's see, what else did he send me? He also sent me The King Creole, because I predicted Dustin Poirier would beat Conor McGregor. And then he got me Mitchell, Mystery Science Theater. And he sent me Jim Cotta. And a few more, I think. But that's, and
it's
Red
an impressive
Heat.
theme selection.
Yeah, but we love it. So whenever we have to go out of our way to pick funky movies for each other, if we get a pick right. But I got Only the Strong. And so Only the Strong shows up, and you and I were talking about what should we do next. And I hadn't watched this movie since 93. I'm pretty sure 94 maybe when we rented it, because it probably took a while for it to come out. So 94. You and I both haven't watched 94, but we both love it. And so I was like, this is perfect. Let's talk Only the Strong.
Yeah, I mean, it's uplifting. It's exotic. This guy's really cool and charismatic. There's some interesting fight scenes. And I think it's just that time in our lives that you watch something and it really sticks with you. So it was a heavy dose of nostalgia to watch it again. But I'm kind of thoroughly confused about this movie now when I rewatch it.
Yeah.
Like, it's this martial arts expert. He gets out of the army. He goes back to his hometown. He breaks up a fight. He gets hired on
three people
by beating up three
drug dealers.
Jamaican gang members who also know capoeira. And so he beat them up in the school. And then they give him a job teaching the 12 worst students, I'm going to do air quotes here, in the school,
These
and
kids are
teaching them
pretty good.
capoeira.
They actually show up to this class. If he got the 12 worst students, Erik, he'd have 4 of them at a time. He would never have he has all 12 at the same time.
They showed up. You
can't get the 12 worst students and have them all there.
It was so nihilistic, too, because they're talking about, they put these bars up on the hallway stairs because they got tired of, quote, scraping kids off the floor. They kept saying there's nobody left to save. I heard the bottom of the barrel a few times. And there's no women. There was 12 dudes, actually.
And only 12% of the kids graduate. Yeah.
40% are high, and 70% are packing weapons. I'm like, how did they get this data? How did they get this? Who wrote this?
This is horrifying, Erik. 7 out of 10 kids have weapons.
Yeah, I'm surprised there are any fights whatsoever. Like, why would I want to fight this guy? He's got a weapon.
Yeah.
But so he starts out, he's teaching, but then, I feel like all movies where you have a teacher that's really inspirational, there's a student that dies in the movie, like Dead Poet Society, where the student killed himself because he wanted to be an actor. Dangerous Minds, the guy got killed over a girl, like one of the leaders in the class. Dangerous Minds was the one with Michelle Pfeiffer. And this one, Silverio started a fire in the school and someone died. So it's like, and then it turns into this revenge flick. So it's a tale of 2 different movies here. So there's a lot to unpack here.
It's really interesting too what Stevens does in this movie, played by Mark Dacascos. He sort of shows up, beats people up at this high school, and what the one refreshing thing is his like Kerrigan, his 11th grade history teacher history science teacher who turned his life around, goes, listen, this fight was awesome and the kids loved it, so we need to do a program where people get beat up, and that's, I mean.
Inspired thinking.
Yeah, and like, hey,
whatever they were doing was not working, so you might as well try something different.
Yeah, let's go do some capoeira. Right? So let's have our 12 worst students go. I mean, what you want to send your best of the 12% just to make sure that they're happy? But never mind. Right? So then you have, because remember when he said like, oh, they're not worth saving? He's like, well, what about the 12%? And then they give him the students that aren't part of that. Never mind. But so yeah, they send him in. They clean up a firehouse that's just conveniently around, which I love.
They kicked out some squatters who were in there.
And they leave peacefully. I just love how, this is what I like about this movie. Dude shows up, beats up 3 drug dealers. Here's the thing about drug dealers. Like, nothing happens after that. You can't just beat up 3 drug dealers, Erik. Like,
and pretend like nothing happened.
You're gonna get shot.
Remember that.
I'm sorry. Like, they're gonna remember that. And he gets a fire, they immediately give him a class, which I love. It's just, there's no way.
Montage too. They had a good montage of cleaning the firehouse. I love a good montage of cleaning. I watched Revenge of the Nerds recently, and they were cleaning out the house. Whenever you have those montages where you get a lot done in a short amount of time, it feels pretty good. Just
bonding. They gutted an entire firehouse, and I just love how fast that happened. And then he gets his 12 kids, and then he just starts training them. You have a couple hiccups here and there, but then they're a fully functional squad soon after that. And as a teacher, the one thing that I like about Mark Dacascos' character, Stevens, is he's not there to leave. Like, so working, sometimes I get these teachers, because I've taught high school, college, I taught in Korea, I was a substitute teacher, I did Big Brothers Big Sisters. One thing you see is a lot of these teachers show up with all idealistic and like, I'm going to change the world, and they're all working, they're getting everything pumped up, and then they realize that the school system's about money, and then they get kind of depressed, and then their work falls down the thing, and then they leave, and then I have to cover their classes. So yeah, it's about consistency. Like, these kids just need a consistent presence in their life that is on time, picks them up, cares. Like, they have a routine, they have somewhere to go. And I like that about Dacascos in the beginning.